phone number.
Okay, we've just turned the recorder on, and I'd like to welcome everyone here. I'm Helen Fletcher, Vice President of the Metchosin Seniors Association. 2 years ago, the Seniors Resource Center received a grant to offer presentations by Zoom as part of the Senior Center Without Walls program. And since that time, we received a second grant, and we have continuously offered 2 to 4 programs a month. Our inaugural program was an interview with Elizabeth Tipton's daughter, where she asked Isabel questions about growing up in Metchosin. Isabel delighted her viewers with her stories, and this interview has been viewed on YouTube 204 times now. After that program, many Metchosin residents commented that it was a shame that we had not interviewed David Rands, who had passed. When I mentioned this to John, he agreed that David had many good stories and suggested his sister, Judy Partridge, could recount her memories of growing up in Metchosin. So well over a year since that conversation, we are so pleased to be able to welcome Judy and John. In 1946, when their father retired from the military and Judy was 11, the Rands family moved to Metchosin, and shortly thereafter, John was born in Metchosin. Thank you very much for agreeing to participate, Judy and John. I have just a few housekeeping items to go over before we get started. This interview will be recorded and posted on the Metchosin Seniors YouTube channel. Please keep your microphones muted unless you have a question or a comment to keep the background noise down. And you can ask questions or add your memories by unmuting yourself or typing in the chat box. Over to you, Judy and John. Thank you.
This happened.
We're on. Bro.
Yeah, entertain. This is all about your life. People are sick of my life. So, well, Judy, I mean, you started off talking about. I thought it was interesting a little bit, just about the Edmonton aspect when you were before you came here.
Yeah, and that was like I lived in Edmonton for about 4 years, and my father was posted there in the Army. He was in the Signal Corps, and yeah, it was the Warriors were very, very prominent in our life. I mean, I remember when Isabel's talk, she mentioned something about that and the blackouts, and we did that too. We had to put blankets over the windows, and no shred of light could come through, and we had ration books for everything. No matter what we bought for food or anything, it was all rationed. Many things we weren't allowed to on Halloween. We weren't allowed to ask for candy. It was all of the war effort. We collected pennies and rubber and things like that for the war. And gee, I mean, I remember Father bringing home gas masks for us to fit us with, you know, and I still remember the smell of that rubber. Ugh. But so when we first came from Edmonton on the train, which was an amazing trip. And of course, David was so daring. We ran up and back and forth from one car to another, all the full length of the train.
And you were about 11 at that time?
Yeah. And when we arrived, we went to Esquimalt and lived with my grandma and grandpa for just a very short time while Father was looking for some property and a house. And I saw when we came to Metchosin, there was still some remnants of the war. I remember in Esquimalt, we still used those ration books. Mm-hmm. And I remember in Metchosin, I remember army trucks going up and down the road. That was just my first introduction to Metchosin. Was, you know, the war had was winding down, and all of the.
So what did you think coming from, you know, Edmonton and everything, coming to Metchosin?
It was a really big change. Edmonton was far north and flat land, huge thunder and lightning storms. We saw the northern lights. The winter was just nothing but snow. We had a wonderful time. Coming here, there was all these tall fir trees, the mountains, the ocean. I had never seen the ocean before. And when Father was negotiating to buy the house on Taylor Road, we kids went down Taylor Road to the beach. And that was my very first introduction to the ocean. And there was a giant storm going on. And I couldn't believe it. This storm was raging, the wind was blowing, and the rain and the logs were being tossed up all over the place. We couldn't get over it. We had come from this completely different place. And but that was my first introduction to the ocean, the logs, the storms, the trees. I loved it. I loved it. You know, it was really neat.
So you spent grade 5 in 3 different schools.
I did. I started grade 5 in Edmonton. Then when we moved, we came west and went to Esquimalt. I was in grade 5 there. And then we moved to Metchosin and I was still in grade 5. So 3 different schools for grade 5.
So when you got here, it must have been quite a shock at the size of the school, how little it was.
I couldn't get over it. That school, I mean, the building is still here. I saw it when I got.
We're sitting in it.
Yeah, we're sitting in it. But all it was, you know, the front part where the double doors are and the steps go up. Well, that was the school, just that part. All the rest has been added on. And we had grade 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 all in one room. We called it the big school because the little school, which is now the little museum,
It's the school museum.
that was grade 1, 2, 3, and 4. And Mrs. Yorston oversaw those grades in the little school. And Mrs. Helgeson, Marion Helgeson, that's the mother of Isabel, she handled, it was unbelievable what those teachers did. Because there was a row of grade 5, a row of grade 6, 7, 8, and 9. I think there was only 4 kids in grade 9 and maybe 4 or 5 and, you know, on and on. She would dish out the work for that period of time to us in this row. The others were all doing homework. She would go through the thing, whether it was science or math or English, whatever it was, and then assign us a bunch of work to do. And then we would get busy doing that work while the next row, she taught them their stuff. And then they would be busy doing their work. And then the next row got taught. I don't know how those women did it. I really don't know how they did it. It was amazing what they did. And our room was as quiet as a mouse. Everybody was just doing their work. And it was peaceful and quiet and orderly. And we all learned because we had to take those BC tests at the end of the year, you know, those exams, when we were all passing into the next grade. So she taught everything she was supposed to teach to all those grades. It was amazing.
So I know David, our
brother,
our older brother.
Yeah.
I remember him talking about the school and saying that his favorite part of school was going downstairs and stoking the furnace.
Yeah, well, David was a bit naughty sometimes, and because underneath the furnace, underneath like the floor, the main floor, the furnace was down in the basement, and there was this gigantic grate that was on the floor above. And in the wintertime, we used to love to go and stand over that grate and all that nice warm air would come up. So I don't know, maybe he was trying to see something shouldn't have been seeing. I don't know.
Well, I would have been David. But anyways, we'll move on.
The bathroom was downstairs too.
Oh, he just said he liked getting away from the
getting
learning and shoveling the coal. That's
oh
what he liked
yeah,
to do,
yeah, that would be David. Yeah.
So anyways, you had to, there was no buses or anything like that.
No, we biked or walked. If the weather was good, we went on our bicycles.
Mhm.
Everybody did. And if it wasn't nice, we would walk. And it was just a mile, so it wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, it was sure different from Edmonton, but I don't really remember a whole lot about Edmonton. I remember the school was huge and brick and lots of rooms in it. So this was a real difference, coming all these grades in one room. It was quite a shock. And well, the picture, I wonder if Lori, did you have a picture that you were gonna, did I give you that picture?
Yes.
There it is.
There's the picture. I don't know if you can
Yeah,
see
it's
it.
pretty blurry. that
Yeah,
one.
it's pretty blurry. But there was all those grades
Oh,
in that picture. Mrs. Helgeson's on one side and Mrs. Yorston on the other side. And all those kids, there,
There.
that's better. It's still hard to see each one, but it's pretty good.
So Mrs. Helgeson is on the far left,
Yeah,
Mrs.
Mrs.
Yorston's on
Yorston
the
on the
right.
right, yeah.
So all the older kids are, I guess, on the top,
Yeah,
grade nines.
Yeah, and then the right all the way down to the younger grades at the
Yeah.
bottom.
Can I
Yeah,
ask a question?
that was quite a change, a real change. But you know, it was really good. It was really nice.
Hey, can I try to ask a quick question before you move on?
Yes.
Well, you
Okay.
say Mrs. Helgeson was the teacher, and then of course there's Hans Helgeson School up the road. Which came first? I mean,
Oh, Hans Helgeson School didn't come along till many, many, many years later.
and how's it related to your, is it related to your teacher, Mrs.
Well,
Helgeson?
it's just named after the Helgeson family.
But
I
there was
That's
two
right. Yeah.
Helgesons. There was
Yeah,
the
there was-
Helgeson family that were the farmers that lived down,
By William Head,
Yeah.
going down towards William Head.
and then the other Helgesons, I don't know whether they're related at all.
I don't know either, to be honest with you. Isabel would know that.
Yeah,
But I honestly don't know. I thought there was a relationship somewhere there. And I don't know, Lori, maybe you know that. Was there, are they related, the two Helgeson families? Do you know? Maybe not.
No, we don't
Anyway.
know.
Anyway, it's, yeah, Hans Helgeson School was many, 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 many years later.
thanks, John, for asking a question we didn't know the
Yeah.
answer to, and making us look good.
Getting
Yeah,
right,
yeah, that's
yeah.
right, yeah.
Moving right along.
So your first experiences living in, like, on the farm and stuff like that?
Yeah, that was, my father was so pleased to be able to buy some acreage out in Metchosin, which at that time was looked upon as the end of the earth. I mean, people from Victoria couldn't believe anybody would want to go and live way, 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 way out there. But we loved it. And I loved growing up on the farm. We had, it was a small farm. It wasn't anywhere near the size of some of the other farms in the neighborhood, but we had 4 cows and we had calves and pigs and chickens and a wonderful garden. I mean, it was really nice. And my father built a barn and built a hay barn, and he had a tractor. We went haying, and he taught me how to drive the tractor while we were haying. It was really funny. One day I got so nervous when I was driving the tractor, and the hay wagon was on the back and the men were stooking the hay in, and my foot slipped off the brake or something.
Yeah.
And I went rolling down the hill, and my father was racing along, trying to reach in and grab the brake and put it on it. But and I got used to it after that, and it was fun. It was, except tramping down the hay in the hay barn was not fun.
So there was, I had to do that
You had
too,
to
the
do
loose hay, that was awful.
I
Oh,
know,
man.
it was dusty
Yeah.
and prickly and
So it wasn't all work though.
no. When my father moved here, he had left behind a friend in Edmonton who was a florist. And they made some kind of a deal between them that he would ship his bulbs, the used bulbs, after selling the flowers, to my father. And then my father would plant them in the field. He cleared the land and with his tractor, and we were picking rocks forever. I don't know what am I supposed to do about that.
It's not mine.
guess-
That's all I care. I don't want to hear.
Anyway, so we helped our father down in the fields working in the mornings. This is in the summertime. And then at lunchtime, he would let us go, and then we'd go to the local beaches. We went to Weir's Beach, which at that time was a beautiful, beautiful, big, wide beach with white sand. And Mr. and Mrs. Weir were just so sweet, because at that time, there were no, the mobile units that are down there now, that none of that was there. It was just their property. And they let us have a little pathway through to the beach, and we loved that beach. And then another beach we just loved was Whitty's Lagoon.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a bit.
Okay.
We still, I mean, you.
He's keeping me on track.
Yeah, that's right.
Because
yeah.
I have a tendency to wander off.
So I was just saying it wasn't all work, because there was the barbershop quartet that they used to do.
Oh yeah, my father he played the mandolin and he played the violin, and he formed this barbershop quartet with three other men. One was across the street, and I think it was Johnny Bly. He lived there for a little while.
Johnny Bly was part of it, I think.
Yeah. And I think they lived in Ruth's place for a little while, but I'm not absolutely sure about that. But I can't remember the other two.
But that was kind of the entertainment at the time.
Oh
wasn't it?
yeah,
it was good.
they were great. They loved it, and they sounded great.
So then with all the cows and everything like that, you had to milk them and separate the cream and all that stuff.
Yeah, my father milked and David milked, and we girls they'd bring the milk in, and we had a little area there in the back with this great big separator, milk and cream separator. In fact, in the Metchosin Museum right now, there is one there that's the same, only it's a smaller one. Ours was pretty big. And I could never get over cranking that thing, and milk comes out here and cream comes out there. I still can't understand it. I know it went through all those cones because we had to wash them all. But my mom sold milk and buttermilk, and we made butter. Our first way of making butter was to put the cream into this big jar. It had flat sides on all four sides and a big lid on top, and we just shook it. We put a towel down, on the counter, we would just shake it and shake it and shake it, and pretty soon it would turn into butter. Then father made this, I don't know if he made this, he could have, because he made all kinds of stuff, but we had this little block of wood, and we'd pack the butter in. We had to put just the right amount of salt in it and stir it up, and then we'd pack it into these cubes, and then it would be a pound of butter. So the meat man would come around every week, and he had a little delivery truck, and we would sometimes get meat from him, and he would buy mom's buttermilk for his customers that wanted it, and skim milk and butter, things like that. That was really neat.
So you used to keep it cool with ice, no refrigerators or anything?
We didn't have a fridge. We had there's a big square hole in the wall, and there was a screen on the outside. And then, the iceman would bring up a big block of ice every so often. I can't even remember how often, but it was a big block like this, and it was sitting in, and then that's where our dairy products went.
Well, I can remember how good that ice cream was that
My
Mother
mom,
used to make. Man.
she made good ice cream.
Yeah.
I have her recipe.
Do you?
Yes. Guess what?
Well, then make some.
I'm-
We'll just have to get a separator and some cows and
Right.
yeah. Well, so So how about I mean, a little bit further about, a little more surrounding Metchosin, we had Elwood Store.
The Elwood Store was the place where Mama used to get her groceries. And it's not even there now. But it was the main store. The other one I'll
Yeah.
tell you about in a minute.
It was right at the top of the first long stretch going up Rocky Point Road.
Yeah, right across from that little church.
Yeah.
And it was the big deal store. And, it was so neat. It was just like a regular country store, it had everything in it, everything. So, but Mama used to walk because we didn't have a car, but she pulled a wagon and she would get her stuff. Sometimes if she had a big order of things to get, she would just call it in and the delivery guy would bring it. And of course, the delivery guy was this very good looking teenage man that my sister and I, Pat and I, had this big crush on, and we would love it when my mom ordered stuff that would come.
Yeah, I can remember, and this was quite a bit later, but I can remember seeing my father get gas from Elwood's store. And it was one of those old gas pumps that you pumped up by hand, and the amount of gas was shown on a gradient on the glass. And
yeah,
it was quite something.
it really was.
But then came Duddy's store.
Yeah, and Duddy's store, I think, was always there. It's just that it was too far away for Mom to walk. So we had 2 stores in the district, and that was that one. In fact, the hill that comes down, it was called Duddy's Hill.
I used to call it Duddy's Hill.
Yeah, it was named Duddy's Hill. And Mr. Duddy, he was a slender man that was kind of hunched over, and to us, he was old. He was probably a lot younger than I am right now. But I remember David telling this story that he was up there one time and Mr. Duddy was coming into the store. He was either coming into the store carrying all these cartons of eggs, or he was leaving the store. I don't know which. But anyway, one of the cartons of eggs was beginning to slip down. And David said, Mr. Duddy, your carton of eggs is starting to slip down. And he says, if it's gonna fall, it's gonna fall. And just kept right on walking that way. And David was kind of going ready to run in and catch it if it,
because he wanted to make rotten eggs so he could
oh,
throw them in the
probably
barn,
because we'd have rotten egg fights in the barn. Yeah.
So then Duddy's became Bly's.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was straight Duddy's to Bly's. There might have been somebody in between, but I think so. Well, I tell you, when the Bly's got that store, everything just came to life. We went into that store a lot because they had this little soda fountain, and it was so fun. I mean, they made the best milkshakes. Oh, they made the best milkshakes. And we used to love to just, especially in the summertime, just walk up to the store. We had a few shekels to spend, and we'd spend it on our nice milkshakes and then maybe get some chips to eat on the way back or something. It was a big event. It really was.
And I used to go to the church.
The church, that was Reverend Bolton. He was the pastor, and Mrs. Bolton taught Sunday school. And we kids would go up there for Sunday school. And I remember one day we were all sitting, all us kids in the front of the church, and she was teaching us lessons. And there was an earthquake. And I'll never forget it. We're sitting there terrified because the whole place is shaking. And I'm looking up at the stained glass windows, wondering if they're going to break and fall. And Mrs. Bolton was just very, very calm. She said, "Now, dears, it's just a little earthquake, and it's all going to be fine." But afterwards, many years afterwards, I thought to myself, wouldn't that have been better if she had hustled us out of that building?
The pews were pretty heavy. You could climb underneath them.
Yeah, that's probably a good protection.
Yeah. So, of course, there was always the community hall.
That community hall, and it's still there the way it was when I was young. I mean, it's been propped up and it's been, given a facelift once in a while, but it's still the same place. And the whole community was involved in that building. It was really, really neat. There was a little upstairs room. Later in my life, I taught dancing up there in that school. So some of the local ladies, my mom, Gwen Day, Mrs. I think, I'm not sure whether Noel Pemberton Building came to that or not. I don't know. Or Shirley Wild, I think we might have. Anyway, that place was used for square dances, weddings, any social event. Badminton, we played badminton in there. Oh, there was just tons of stuff that went on, and everybody was involved in it, cleaning it up, and there was a little kitchen in the back, and there was like I say, many events went on there. And when the place needed a new furnace, it was old Vic, and I think Harry, his son at that time,
Being Bickerdike.
Mr. Bickerdike,
Yeah,
yes, I'm sorry.
We
Yeah.
all call them Old Vic.
We all
Everybody
called him
called
Old Vic. I don't
yes.
even remember what his name was. I
Mhm.
remember his son Harry having a name, but Old Vic, we just
Yeah.
called him Old Vic. He and my father and several of the men in Metchosin got together, and it was all volunteer work. And they just dug up a big area in there, took the floorboards up and put in a nice new furnace in there, and really worked hard. Pat and Larry, my sister Pat and Larry Ridley, they were very
Okay.
active in the hall, put on dances, put on all kinds of stuff. My mom was, everybody was. It was a neighborhood. That's one of the things I remember about Metchosin. The whole neighborhood was involved in so many things. Just, it was really neat.
Yeah, well, old Vic was our fire department in those
He
days.
was.
Yeah.
He had his garage right where it's still there. The old building is still there.
I still get complaints, but anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was an absolutely wonderful operating garage. He looked after all our cars. He fixed everything. Everybody that had something wrong with their car brought it up to Old Vic and he fixed it. Yeah, and he ran the fire department. You know more about that than I do.
Yeah,
Tell
so
the
that's
story
sort of,
about
well,
that.
I mean, those were later times and but yeah, Bickerdike really, the old Vic with his own money made his own fire trucks and was the fire department for quite a number of years. Yeah, I mean, people
All
don't,
on his own.
yeah, people don't realize that they made a lot of contributions to the community. back
Very
in the day.
much. Yeah.
Anyways, to get to out of Metchosin, how did you do that?
Well, we had this bus called the Veteran Stages. It was a bus that came from Victoria every morning, and it was just kind of an old rattle trap of a bus. And every morning, and it would go into Victoria, and then at around 5 o'clock, it would come back and deposit us. And so we kids, when we were wanted to go to a movie downtown, which it didn't happen very often. But when we did, we were so excited. I mean, this was a big deal to get on the Veteran Stages and go into town, the big city.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. And several of us would go at a time. It wasn't just one person deciding to go. It was an event. And so there were several of us that went. One of the fun things we used to do when we get into town, maybe I can bring in the walkers, or maybe, I don't know.
Well, we're coming.
We're coming to that. But anyway, we would get off the bus, and then we first of all, we had to go to the bakery and we had to get some goodies, and then we'd go to the movie theater and we'd have the goodies when we went to the movie theater. But one of the things we had fun doing, and David was really big in this, he and his boyfriends, and we'd walk down the street, and then we'd all stop. And then we start looking up and pointing. There was nothing there, but we had everybody in the block was all looking around at each other and looking up to see what it was we were. And then we'd laugh our heads off. And
So you were sort of the first of the social media influencers. Then, is that it?
maybe so.
So
Well, it was a stupid thing, but I mean, we sure had a lot of fun.
so you
doing
must
it.
have you must have actually seen the Galloping Goose and the actual trains.
Oh, yeah.
I know it as a lineal trail now. But
Yep. The train was running every day, and Pat and I, we would just love to go up Taylor Road. We lived right in the middle of Taylor Road, where John lives now. And we went up the road, and the railroad came. It's the Galloping Goose Trail right now, but at the time it was a railroad going through. And the reason they called it the Galloping Goose, because the train, when it got out to Souk, it kind of lurched and wobbled and wiggled around things, and they ended up calling it, it looks like this old galloping goose. So that's how it got its name. But Pat and I, after school, we'd walk up there, and we decided we were going to sit on these railroad ties that were all piled up in a little cleared area there. There was a little switch thing there where you switch tracks, you know, they'd let off cars or a siding. Yeah. And we'd climb up there, and we'd sit up on top waiting for the train to come. And pretty soon we'd feel this, it felt like an earthquake. Everything was moving, and we'd start getting all, maybe we should go. Maybe we should go. We can get off this now before the train comes. We can get off and we can go back home, you know. No, we're going to stay. We're going to stay. Well, we were spooking each other. Well, what if the train gets off onto the siding? What if it comes loose? What if the ties fall and we fall in front of the train? So we'd feel this thing coming around the corner before we ever saw it or heard it. And then back before it went across Rocky Point Road, and then curved around and came where we were, and it had to blow its whistle before it came to the road. So we'd hear the whistle, and we knew it's too late now. It's too late now. We have to stay here. And we'd be sitting there, and this thing would come barreling down the tracks, and it was just big and loud, and the steam coming out of
The
it.
smoke and everything.
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, we got such a thrill. This is what our country life was, John. It was a thrill to
Let's go watch the train.
Yeah, let's watch the train. Or let's go to Victoria and pretend we see things, make people laugh. That was our big deal.
Yeah, well, you can remember too when the quarantine station was a
Yeah,
quarantine station.
the quarantine station, it's where the prison is now,
Yeah.
right? And in those days, it was a great big huge building, and all the ships coming into Victoria had to stop there first, and the doctor boat had to go out and make sure there was no disease on board, or no anything that they wouldn't accept when they pulled into Victoria. And we used to go down and watch. We were so fascinated watching the doctor's boat go out and meet these. And there was, every once in a while, somebody did have to get off because they had a disease or something. And so they were taken care of at the quarantine station. And also Bentic Island, which was the little leper colony at that time, was just offshore a bit, and the doctor boat would go out there and back. But later on, after the quarantine station closed, we kids went down there and sneaked in, and which we were wont to do. And I was so amazed at what I saw, especially the kitchen area. It was huge, great big counters and these giant sized woks, big steel bowls that were sunk into the, and stoves and everything prepared to feed a lot of people. And yeah, we thought that was just really amazing.
So what did you do as, playing with other kids and stuff as you grew up?
Well, we soon got friends with the Helgesons. They had the whole area, which now is part of it is Devonian Park, and the whole huge great big fields. They've sold a bunch of that land, but back then they owned all of that. It was a huge farm. They had a huge barn, and they had many cows. I don't know how many, but they had a big commercial thing going on there with their barns, with their farm. And we kids would play kick the can in the barn, sometimes when the cows were still in the barn. And the boys used to love to get close to a cow and squeeze milk out at us as we were going by. But kick the can was a game that was kind of half hide and go seek and half tag. And we would all be hiding, and the person that was it had to be at the station or whatever, home base, whatever you'd call it. And it wasn't just that he had to go out and find us and then run back and touch home base before we did. We also had to kick this bucket because I don't know why. I have no idea. It was probably Blair that invented that, or David, that we couldn't just run to home base before the guy that was it. We had to kick the can first. Well, I kicked it once and it was an old iron bucket and it was all ripped down the side and I gashed a big gash in my leg. And of course, Blair was I don't know if he was my boyfriend at that time, but he was going to be a doctor one day. So he took me into the milk room and got some gauze and bandaged me all up. But that was fun because we had a big trapeze. We would swing up in the hayloft from one side to the other and then land in a great big mountain of hay. It was just so much fun. And in the winter time, we played ice, we played hockey and stuff they had a pond that froze. They built a little fire and they had lamps all sitting around, and oh, that was just so much fun.
So I can remember the egg fights. And the reason I can remember the egg fights is because one of my earliest childhood memories is going out to our barn and finding this box full of eggs and going, oh, and I just threw them against the wall. And David was so mad that I had taken all of his rotten eggs. And
yeah, the girls didn't get involved in the rotten egg fights, but the boys sure did. Yeah, they would just save up eggs from all of our chickens until there was a whole pile of them. And then the boys would have throw these things at each other and get plastered.
So the Helgesons had 5 kids, Ray, Norman, Eric, Eileen, and Bruce. But there was also the Wachters, which were a prominent family in the same area.
Yeah, the Wachters moved in not too long after we did, and our parents became very good friends. And yeah, there was Blair and Bernard and Bruce and Carol and Daphne. And Carol and Daphne were younger than me, so I didn't get too involved with them. But the boys were more my age, and the same with the Helgeson boys. I was really kind of I don't know, maybe I guess I'd be a tomboy or something. I don't know, because I did a lot of things because my brother David was involved. Everywhere David and Blair and Eric were involved, not every time, but sometimes I was joining in with them. And it was a lot of fun.
Well, it was interesting how the families, sort of big families again, and sort of spanned the age, because Daphne, like Carol, still lives in Metchosin.
Yes, I know.
And Daphne was my first kiss. I think we were 11 years old or something like that, and so that shows you. I mean, you were smitten with Blair, and I was smitten with Daphne.
Yeah,
so,
Blair and I were an item for a couple of years there in our high school years.
Wow.
But we would go down to their barn sometimes and we'd play ping pong. They had a ping pong setup, and poker. We'd play poker with chips. Both our mothers got together and decided that they weren't going to allow us to bet with money. We couldn't use money, even pennies, and no, we can't do that. So we got these chips, and we had a ball playing poker. We played poker at our farm too.
So I think we better move on here. So you also used to go down to the falls, all of you guys.
Yes. And then when we were working in the bulb field for my father, and he let us off in the afternoons, one of the best places we went was, well, Whitty's Lagoon for one thing, but the falls, that was amazing.
It's now known as Sitting Lady Falls.
Yes,
but
we didn't call it that then. It was just the falls.
Yeah, you guys used to swim there and everything.
Yeah, and it was great. And the
I
guys
used to cry because I couldn't go. I was too little.
well, it was a bit dangerous, John.
Mhm.
It was, those rocks were pretty high from the water. And of course, everybody was tell the stories about, oh, there's no bottom to this. You can easily drown and you'll never be found because, and it was a little dangerous. We were around the top, and climbing down the rocks, and some of the boys would be jumping off from way up high. But anyway.
So we're just kind of getting off that topic a little bit, but while we're still talking about those early years, I mean, you guys used to be on the party line with the old candlestick phone and the crank. And
John, that was the craziest thing in our, and we had it in our, you know, where the, where my father and mom had the TV.
oh, I can remember where it was.
Where-
I actually can remember the phone myself.
You can, eh?
Yeah.
Well, who knows? Maybe it's still up in the attic. I
Could
don't know.
be, I don't know.
But yeah, it was an old phone that didn't have a dial on it. It was a crank on the side. And our number was 2 longs like that, and then a short. And if we, and everybody had that kind of a phone number. And we did have 8 people on our party line. So I remember father being so frustrated because he'd pick up the phone to make a phone call and somebody would be yakking and he'd hang it up and then start complaining about so-and-so that was talking too long. Well, it was sometimes we would, as naughty kids, we would listen in too. I think a lot of us did that once in a while. We always got scolded for it when we got caught, but we did it sometimes.
Yeah.
But it was yeah, it was an interesting old phone, and that's it. That's all the while I lived there.
Yeah.
It was like that.
And we had no car.
No car, no. My father went to work for Christopher Pike, who lived on Rocky Point Road, and mom was a friend of his wife Vera, and father would sometimes borrow Christopher Pike's car. And the night you were born, father had to run like everything up to Christopher's place, and Christopher loaned, we call him Chris, Mr. Pike, would loan him the car, and he went into the hospital and you were born. And but I was very disappointed when my mom told me it was a boy. I wanted a girl because I wanted to play with ribbons and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But as soon as I got to know him, I just fell in love with him. In fact, at one point, I asked my mom if I could have him for my own.
Yeah.
Look at
I
you.
wanted that actually. I was going, yeah.
I used to dance with him and put him to
Yeah,
bed
sing to
and,
me and
sing to him.
so when you got out of school, like out of Metchosin
Metchosin
school,
school.
you went to Belmont.
Belmont had just been put together. It was a whole series of Army Quonset huts, we called them. And it became grade 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, all in that school. There was no junior, senior, it was just Belmont school. And when I reached grade 7, like I was in Metchosin school for grade 5 and grade 6, but when 7 came along, that's when the Belmont opened. So we were the first grade 7s that went to that school, that went all the way from grade 7 to grade 12 and graduated. And that was a lot of fun.
So how many were in your graduating class?
You know something, John? I've always thought it was 12, but when I looked through that picture, I looked through my graduating picture last night, and there's 13. And all this time I thought
Yeah.
it was 12. But it wasn't very many compared to
Yeah.
what they have now. But it was great because our graduation was all the mothers would come to the home ec room and make the dinner. And we would dress up in our finery, and we hired a live band to play music for us for the dance later on. But we would have this dinner put on by the mothers, and all of the mothers were in it. All of the mothers were active in PTA. And it was really a neat thing.
And you really liked when you got into that school, didn't you?
I loved it. I was involved in all kinds of sports things. I was in the choir, I was in the drama club, I was in the school newspaper, students council. I thought high school was the best, except for Mr. Stevenson with social studies.
Yeah.
That's the only one I didn't like.
Mr. Stevenson, old Stevie, he taught me French, and it was boring.
Yeah,
Boring.
you know.
But I can remember, I mean, I'll just interject here. I can remember David telling me a story. There was Stevenson, Harold Parrott,
Yeah, he was nice.
Paulson, and
Yeah.
they were all ex-war, like they were ex-military
Military
from the
men.
war. And
Yes.
Archie Stevenson, who was the principal, was, I mean, he was like an ex special services guy, I think, and he was like, a really tough guy, like a commando.
Oh, he was.
And I can
too.
remember Dave, my brother, who was always pushing the envelope.
Yep.
I can remember him saying that Stevenson grabbed him and hauled him out the back of the army huts and said, "You do that again, I'm going to beat the hell out of you."
That would be
Those were the days. You hear that, Danny? That's how they handled it in those days. So.
Yeah, that was old Stevie, all right. Yeah, I even got the strap from him. We kids were outside in the play. We were always picking rocks. That's one of the things we had to do. Everybody got that punishment. As soon as you didn't do something right, you went out and picked rocks and wheelbarrow loads of the things to get the whole thing cleared. And we were, it was winter time, and we were picking up little rocks and making them into snowballs and throwing them, and we broke the window. So we all got a strap for that.
Yeah, I got strapped every year from grade 2 on. And it was Archie Stevenson. They gave me 10 on each hand for when I was in grade 10, and they realized that there was not much to be gained from that. So
yeah,
I guess I was a lost cause by that time. So anyways, yeah, that was quite the deal. You know, you'd walk back into class with your hands bleeding and go, yeah, you know.
you were the hero of the day.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Showing you, and everybody goes, oh.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So after
Oh, I should tell about the grad class party.
sure, yeah.
All the grade 12s, when Holly Francis moved into our midst when I was in grade 10.
And that's where the golf course is now.
Yes.
And the house that's up on the hill,
Yeah,
original house.
It was
yeah.
all their property. They
Yeah.
came from the Francis jewelry family. And she was the city girl, and we were all just wowed by her because, you know, a city girl coming to our place. And they lived in that big house. Of course, we all called it the haunted house before they moved into it. And we sneaked in a couple of times and kind of went through an old trunk that had a bunch of clothes in it we dressed up in. But then when she moved in, of course, it was a monster house. And I remember, I think there was 5 or 6 bedrooms, and every bedroom had its own bathroom, and we were just bowled over. But anyway, she invited all the grade 12s to her party, and it was just before the Easter holidays. And I do believe that the next day after this day, the last day of school before those holidays, I think it was April 1st, and we decided to make an April Fool's joke out of it. Somehow or other, we had that connection. Well, in our partying, we all decided how much we hated the next day, because it was a double class with Mr. Stevenson with social studies. And so we decided to play hooky, all of us at the same time. Well, then we had to make sure, we all had to promise there's no way we would break it and go, because this had to be well, the next day when we came, bit by bit, the whole school was lined up going, oh, are you guys ever going to get it? Oh, and so we thought, oh, what's going to happen now? Mr. Paulson was our homeroom teacher. When he went to do the attendance, nobody there. And so he finally clued in that what's happened here. So so we all stayed away, and the teachers decided to get even with us by making us suffer, because not one teacher said a word about it all the rest of that day. Then we had 10 days of Easter holidays to stew over it, and that's why they did it. When we came back, of course, we had all kinds of punishments, more picking of rocks, staying after school, extra homework. We had to make a library, and but the big thing was we weren't going to be allowed to have our grad. And we were only a couple of months away from our grad. And of course, everything was planned. We were all getting our nice dresses. The mothers were all planning the meal. They'd have a big turkey dinner. Well, when that happened, it was so funny, because we were all just horrified that this would be our punishment, take our grad away from us. Soon as we told our parents, it was like a war
Yeah.
zone. All the mothers descended on Stevie and
Mm.
all of the teachers, and they demanded that they said that you're taking something away from us as well as those kids. You cannot do this. Well, they pressed him pretty hard, and then he had to backtrack, and we were allowed to have our grad. But it was that big
The
event.
power of mothers.
Yeah, the mothers,
Yeah,
the PTA
that's right.
mothers, I tell you, they were something else.
So we're kind of reaching sort of the end of our time here. So what did you do like after grad? I mean, you,
Let's see now. Well, I worked in Victoria as a stenographer for a couple of years, and then Gwen Powell, who was in my class and who had a big family on Metchosin Road there. We decided to go to Saskatoon, where her brothers lived on a big old farm. And we stayed in Saskatoon for a couple of years, and then I came back, and then I worked in the Colwood Pharmacy for a while, and I lived at home again for a while. Then I got married, moved to Seattle, lived in Seattle for about 20 years. I had my son, John,
mhm.
who was born there. The two girls were born in Victoria. And we went down there because my husband was a piano player, and he was playing in a big hotel down there. And it was a great time. I loved living in Seattle. While I was there, I learned hula, taught my daughters hula. They still dance. I still teach and dance. And all those years.
But you were at one time considered to be the sort of the top white hula dancer in the world, weren't you not?
Not quite.
Close. though.
But I was taught, and I
You
got
were- you were
my,
close. Yeah.
I studied under some very, very well-known hula masters from Hawaii. While I was in Seattle, we hired them to come up and teach us, and got my certificate, my teacher's certificate.
Mhm.
And then I went back to teaching in Metchosin Hall, in the upstairs room in Metchosin Hall.
And are we getting a hook here or?
No, not at
Oh.
all. I just, someone's
Okay.
talking.
The big thing that I am left with really is my love for Metchosin. The fact that Metchosin has not changed that much. I still see Metchosin Hall as it was then almost. I see the land around is still the same. I can walk down Taylor Road. It's just the same as I was when I was 12. The there, the little corner store has been expanded into a really, really beautiful, nice store. And my chosen cafe has, I mean, it's a wonderful place, Metchosin. It's a wonderful place to grow up in. I think I'm gonna cry because every time I come out, I'm transported back again. When I came here today and I saw the school, how it's expanded, and how I remember it when it was just that one room.
Yeah.
It-
Well, you.
Now I'm gonna make you cry. I love Metchosin. I love the fact that it has stayed rural, and I can thank my wonderful brother as a mayor for so many years, working so hard to keep it that way, and other council members as well.
Lots of council, lots of dedicated council
Yeah.
members, yeah.
Yeah, it's been, I mean, I live in Langford now, and holy moly, I mean, that thing has grown. I mean, I like where I'm living and all that sort of thing, but nothing can beat Metchosin. To grow up on a farm out, and when I'd come back from Seattle for visits with my kids, I can remember coming, and all the way they'd be singing, over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house we go. And they could hardly wait to arrive, because then they got to experience a bit of farm living.
That's something that I've always appreciated, was being able to have my kids enjoy the same stuff that I did.
Yes, John, you're very, very blessed to have that, because I tell you, it is
Well,
it's a precious thing, and it's a rare thing now.
and you have said many times that growing up in Metchosin was the best possible thing for you.
The best. I can't, I say my thank yous to the good Lord many, many, many times to have been brought up in the family I was brought up in, and the farm, this area of Metchosin. It is valuable. It is precious. And if every kid could grow up the way I grew up, I think there'd be a lot of very happy people.
A little smelly from the rotten eggs, but other than that.
Yeah, the rotten eggs is all part of it. But Metchosin, I can drive into Metchosin now and I can see it the way it was then. The road, the Duddy's Hill was still there. But I love the way they've done the Metchosin Cafe and the little corner store, and the church still there with the churchyard full of lilies every spring, and Metchosin Hall, and so many things are just the same, and it just warms my heart.
There are things that aren't the same are us.
Yeah,
John and Judy.
I keep getting older, but Metchosin doesn't change.
John and Judy, thank you so much for sharing your wonderful memories of Metchosin and also the memories of your family. It was really heartwarming. You thought you might cry. I think I did. Does anybody have any comments or questions they want to do? Danny had to leave because it was his break, John, just a minute before you addressed him.
Oh, too bad.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But he said he's looking forward to watching it on the YouTube.
Well, Danny's the new generation. Well, not the new one, but the sort of the next generation, where came from a big family, a farming family. He would have lots of great memories too.
Yeah.
And he taught in Metchosin. He still is, he's still there. And so, yeah.
And Eleanor Whitney Griffiths would be a good one to call upon. She used to sometimes meet me when we kids went down there to play. And one time we had this huge, great big inner tube tire that Blair got from somewhere. Blair walked her. It was an airplane inner tube. And we used to stand on it in the water and hold hands and try not to fall. Well, I fell inward and I bent my back so badly that I blacked out. And Eleanor and her mom pulled me out of the water. I came to laying on the sand with her massaging my back. And every once in a while I run into Eleanor and we laugh our heads off and give each other a big
You always
hug.
laugh when you're talking about
I know,
Eleanor.
I
Yeah,
know.
Eleanor's a great-
She's a sweetheart. She'd be a good one to have do this.
And
Thank you.
just a little plug for the previous videos. You had one with Brian Killip. And
that's good.
I don't know what he said about himself, but Brian was very instrumental in building the foundation of this community, especially the economic foundation. He and Herman Volk, well, all of them. That first council
Yeah,
was
it was-
phenomenal. So
Yeah,
they were the ones that really set the stage that enabled those of us that followed to be able to just sort of maintain that course. And that's
Yeah.
why we're still much the same.
I
So,
know. And Shirley Wild was very.
yeah, Shirley was the one she was the visionary, that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she got us into the incorporation part of it, and then from then on, the
Yeah.
council has just been great all this time.
Just to show you how smart I am, I voted against incorporation 3 times.
Really?
Yeah.
Can I chime in with one thing?
Yeah.
My memories of coming up to Metchosin for the summers were some of the best memories of my life too. And you both, well, your whole family, all the aunts and uncles, Uncle John, Uncle David, Aunt Pat, and my mom were a huge part of that. And was one of Grandpa's cows named Jingles?
Jingles, yes.
Yeah, one of the
Okay.
A
cows.
little Jersey cow.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jingles. And
Yep.
one of the cows was Cleopatra, and another one was Chloe. But
All
Jingles
part of my
was-
memories too.
Yeah, Jingles was the little.
thank you.
Jersey.
I can actually remember milking Jingles
Jingles?
as a very small kid,
She, well,
being
yeah.
shown how to, they're
Oh,
Yeah,
it was, and
yeah.
I wasn't able to, I tried it, but it was the men that usually did
Yeah.
it, Father and David. But, yeah, it was, beautiful milk, beautiful cream.
Oh, it was.
Oh, my, yeah. Yeah, it was really nice. Oh, I forgot to tell about Barb Rainey, Pat's friend Barb Rainey has, I guess we're over.
Sorry,
time.
Helen, but you're gonna have to put up with it a little bit longer. But
Go ahead.
Is it okay? Barb Rainey was my sister Pat's girlfriend, and they lived on Kangaroo Road. And Mr. Rainey had a farm too. And one day my mom was alone. My father had gone to some meeting somewhere. I think he was out of town, and the bull got loose, and mom didn't know what to do. So she called upon Mr. Rainey, and he came flying down, and he got the bull and brought the bull back in. And my mom just called him an angel from then on, because she didn't know what she was going to do. She was scared to death of this bull. I mean, it was a powerful bull. And yeah, he brought that bull in.
Jimmy Rainey was a tough old
Jimmy
guy.
Rainey,
Boy.
yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He was.
I used to hay for him.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Oh, yeah. I liked working for Jimmy Rainey.
He was,
He was
yeah,
a real hard taskmaster, but
nice
he
and
was
a
a good
good
guy.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah. And Pat was friends with Barb for a long time, and then
mhm.
she went down to the States, and then
And she's still around too.
she's still around somewhere.
So
Yeah.
there's still lots of people in this community that would have similar remembrances. you know, or-
Remembrances. I know we probably left out lots of them,
Yeah.
but it was great. It was great living here all those years. And then when I came back to Metchosin, you know, and brought my kids with me and lived in Metchosin for quite a long time, and loved it. Like I say, I taught dancing in the upstairs room of Metchosin Hall, and I just loved living. I've always
Yeah.
loved Metchosin,
Me
and
too.
Taylor Beach was my
Hmm.
first introduction to the ocean. It was yeah, I'll never forget.
So there we are, Helen.
Well, that was really wonderful, and it'll be on YouTube within by the end of the day, probably. And people can watch it, and it was an excellent conversation. So many good memories.
I'm
Thank you
scared to
so
go
much.
look at it
Yeah.
and see what we did,
I
what we
I
said.
never look at my own stuff.
Well, I'm thrilled that my daughter, who's living close to me, is here, and my son in California and his wife. How nice that they came.
It's lovely. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for listening. Yeah.
Yeah.